It's interesting because I was also laid off from Salesforce during that like tech layoff period. So I know how that felt. But on the contrary, I think it was actually a good time for me because I was already doing things on the side and I had already wanted to leave to do my own stuff. But that being said, I think when I was there, I figured that maybe it was because it was already a lot of structure in place in a big company. Nothing wrong with the company, the culture, my colleagues were great, the environment was great. But I think from a professional growth perspective, I felt like I much preferred a faster paced, startup-ish environment. And so I felt like my learning was a little bit limited while I was there.
I mean, a bit of my own experiences. I joined banking like every other shiny, bright-eye graduate of SME back then. It was a holy grail of our time. And then I joined that. It didn't cut it up for me. There was an opportunity to do my own thing and I enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the process. It was difficult for sure. And I think another element of being difficult is my peers were all doing different things. Meaning they were doing a corporate life, right? They were, I don't know, wearing a corporate attire, suits or whatever, going to big Raffles Place offices. And I was like trying to refresh my manual driving license because I had to drive a van for my laser tech business to drive around. We did a mobile laser tech business and it was a bit of a fear back then. I got my license early on in my life and then I didn't drive for a long time and suddenly I have to do this. So I hear you.
If I tell you today, you spend the next 10 years and you get this particular outcome, it's a lot easier to then commit to, okay, if I do 10 years and then I will get X dollar off, just for simplicity's sake, let's say you get $1 million, right? So I work 10 years, I get $1 million. If you know that you can just work 10 years and get $1 million, it's easier to commit. What makes entrepreneurship so hard is that you don't know whether it takes 10, 20, 30, 40 years and you don't know what's the end amount that it could be 40 years and $0. Some people go bankrupt, some people fail, started multiple things, nothing worked out. I think the uncertainty is what is most difficult.
In fact, I have come to realize that being able to focus about career is also a privilege. We take it for granted.
Yep.
Sometimes, right? As you get older or unfortunate things happen to you or your family or loved ones, then maybe you cannot focus that much energy and time
For sure.
on your career or what you do for work, right? So then a paycheck, as much as it's addictive, but it's what you really need. Hi there. Thank you for being here with On My Own Terms. It's a podcast for the bold, the curious, and those at the crossroads of career and life. Would share it with a friend who needs to watch or hear this too. Do not forget to subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, our socials, and wherever you're watching or listening this from. And if you're on your own journey of change, come check out the link in this episode description or show notes. That's where the free resources, newsletter, and stories live. Real change comes from taking action. Now, back to the episode. Hey everyone, welcome to an episode of On My Own Terms podcast. Today we've got a special guest, and today I'm going to do something special. I'm going to let our guest introduce himself. Maybe I'll just jump right straight into it. Marcus, tell us about yourself.
First of all, thanks for inviting me, John. I appreciate the invite. Excited to see and hope whatever I can be sharing is of value. Just a quick background. I'm Marcus, currently the co-founder of Sales Duo. And in a nutshell, what we do is helping B2B companies find new sales opportunities with our AI sales intelligence agents.
Cool. I think there's a lot to unpack here. And maybe I'll just share, right, for you, just fun fact, we met about 2 years ago, studied a bit over 2 years ago at an SMU alumni networking event. There was wine involved and maybe I got a little too chatty, but the context of that meetup was, I think it was some wine tasting event. And then at that time, I was recently laid off at Shopify and I was feeling quite down. But a friend pulled me along and then he said, look, I think this meetup could do you good. You could meet cool people. And you were not in my circle of friends, but then somehow we chatted and I think I reviewed to you, I got laid off. And after we went for coffee. And I think I just want to share that my initial impression of you was I was very impressed. Obviously, although we're alumni, but we are like years apart, right? Decades apart. And I thought it was not so usual for me to find someone quite so upbeat, positive, energetic, I think, for someone much younger. And the other thing was, I think, coming from SMU decades ago, I remember very much that a lot of fresh graduates just want to look for a job, either at a bank, at a management consultancy firm. But for you, you were only graduated a few years and then you were doing your own thing. So maybe we'll dive a bit deeper into your career journey. Tell us a bit I know you told me you went Salesforce. Tell us about that time that you went Salesforce.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was also laid off from Salesforce during that like tech layoff period. So I know how that felt. But on the contrary, I think I was it was actually a good time for me because I was already doing things on the side and I had already wanted to leave to do my own stuff. But to answer your question, I think maybe going a bit even before I joined Salesforce, even in uni, I already started doing different things. I was just exploring. Of course, I didn't know what I was doing back then. But so even when I had joined Salesforce, it was more of a mental break for me because I was a little bit burned out from whatever I was doing during uni. The opportunity came about, I got a referral into Salesforce, and then I just managed to secure the role. I think the biggest thing I got out of that is really the structure and how a sales organization is set up. Before I even joined, I honestly didn't know about the world of tech sales, about all of this like SaaS side of things, because I actually majored in finance, was probably more in the startup space than anything. Yeah, I didn't know of this concept. I think that was before that wave of like interest in tech sales where people were starting to recognize that there was a lot of money in it, which was why people started to go towards that. So when I went in, I didn't really know about that space. But I think I'm thankful for the opportunity because it helped me understand how sales was probably one of the biggest sales force in the world was structured. And I think it helped me even in what I do now. But that being said, I think when I was there, I figured that maybe it was because it was already a lot of structure in place in a big company. So I didn't really enjoy nothing wrong with the company, the culture, my colleagues were great, the environment was great. But I think from a professional growth perspective, I felt like I much preferred a faster paced startup-ish environment. And so I felt like my learning was a little bit limited while I was there. And yeah, it was great learning in terms of how things can evolve to be at that stage. But going to a corporate environment reinforced my desire to do my own.
Let me unpack this a bit. When you were in uni, in SMU, where we were at, you were already trying different things on the side. Yes.
Yep.
And your first job that you got, full-time job after graduation was Salesforce. But what made you apply for that full-time job at Salesforce?
So I tried a couple of different things in uni, didn't work out. And by then, so imagine you're studying, I've got all this like CCAs or whatever extracurricular activities. And I was trying to like start different things. So I was a bit burned out at the end when things weren't working out. So when the opportunity came, it was at a point where I didn't have my business in a place where I could afford to go full time. And I was just, a bit like, I don't know what I want to do next. So when the opportunity came, it was like a good timing where I was a bit lost and I just wanted to use the time to figure out what I wanted to do next.
What was the excuse or the reason they gave at Salesforce for laying people off at that point in time?
I don't think there was anything in particular. I think it was just what they call tech bloat. So excess
Quite
manpower
winter.
required for whatever their needs were. But a lot of my colleagues actually got invited back after things moved or roles opened up. Yeah, I think at one point I could have been like I was not really asked. I think because my manager knew that I didn't want to go back, but she was like, oh, she's like casually brought it up to ask me whether I wanted to. But then, yeah, even my colleagues who went back knew that I wouldn't have wanted to go back. So the offer wasn't made or anything. But yeah, I think eventually they did bring some people back.
Isn't it bizarre that they lay off people and then they ask people, the very people that they lay off, to come back?
I mean, I don't know how it works now, but it's just the nature of how some of at the end of the day, they've got investors to account for or whatever financials that they have. So I'm not in a position to comment on any of that activity.
No, a similar experience as well at Shopify, to be honest. The people the positions that they lay off, and then next thing I knew, a few months later, they were advertising to hire back the same roles. At that point in time, it was quite bizarre to me. And I thought that they would have done some thinking. I thought the management or the leadership would have been a bit more strategic. But, I hear you. And what made you so sure that you wouldn't want to go back?
So I think there are two big schools of options you can take. Go to a big company like Salesforce, get a good branding. It helps in the credibility side of things. Or you can go to a smaller startup and potentially earn less but get more exposure and experience. On hindsight, I would have much preferred the startup route, or rather maybe that would have been a better option, and I think I would have learned a lot more there. And I think there are still merits to going to an organization and learning from other more experienced folks. But at that point, my rationale was if you go to a bigger organization, everything is structured, you don't really have much space to explore. And I'm not saying that's wrong, right? Everybody has their own preferences. Everybody has their own things that they like to do. For me, I'm more of like a start builder of sorts. I love the building process and I want to start new things. So for me, startup environment suits me very well. If I go to a startup, I'm going to be working long hours. And I'm like, okay, why don't I just use those same hours to be building my own? Sure, I make a whole lot more mistakes. I may not have someone to guide me, but you just learn through it. And I think even when having done this for a while now, there are just some things that you have to go through to learn. It's the knowledge and the experience or expertise is different. Someone can tell you, hey, it's going to be hard. And that's something that I think about nowadays. Is I always say, I knew it'd be hard, but I didn't know it'd be this hard. And your understanding of what hard means deepens over time. Someone can tell you, hey, this is going to be hard, but being naive, you wouldn't understand, or rather, you can't feel what that actually means until you've gone through it. And so I think there's no better teacher in that sense than experience.
Yeah, you said a hard thing. That came to my mind, right? The hard thing about hard things. I don't know if you read that. Yeah. Oh, okay. I recommend that. I think that there's two books about the startup space that I would recommend. I think one of them is The Hard Thing About Hard Things. And I forgot the other one, but I'll put in the show notes. And there was this phrase in either one of the books. It says, if you're gonna eat shit, don't nibble. And I'll say it again, if you're gonna eat shit, don't nibble. So you might as well just go full on and bite it, swallow it, don't savor it because this is shit. Yeah, that reminds me of that. But what stood out for me now and even back then when I first met you was that you were very sure about doing your own thing. And that was something quite clear and a bit striking about you. What made you or what makes you so sure about building your own thing?
I'm not quite sure I have the answer for that. I guess it's just what lights me up. I would put it that way. So I'll give this example, right? A lot of people go into entrepreneurship for different reasons, money of which is one of the biggest things. But what you often see is that people that go into it for the wrong reasons, like chasing money, would realize, or you would see that they would die out after a while because you would realize that you work longer hours, you got more stress, you got more responsibilities, you get paid last. There's a whole lot more shit to deal with. All the worst things come to you first, and you don't necessarily earn more. So, yeah, I think for me, the reason why I've been able to stuck through things, right? And I'll be very honest to say that my journey hasn't been all like sunshine. Like we've honestly been struggling, depending on how you define that word. But I don't think I may have matched my pay or maybe even less on some months, right? Because it's unpredictable. So I'm not like earning big bucks and whatever not. But I just enjoy the process of building, of starting something, of just that lights me up. So I would say that's why I've been able to stick with it, and that's why I will continue to do it.
After asking the question, then I realized that you actually answered it before, earlier in our conversation. I think you are a builder. I think that's something that I took in my notes. And I think my podcast, I've talked to people who are, a lot of them are actually builders, so I can see a pattern. And maybe that's a trait, that subconscious trait. That's why I find them interesting and I want to talk to them for this podcast. So you're a builder and you're going to be your own thing. I can relate to that. I mean, a bit of my own experiences. I joined banking like every other shiny, bright eye graduate of SMU back then. It was a holy grail of our time. I don't know if it still is. I think it shouldn't. And yeah, and then I joined that. It didn't cut it for me. There was an opportunity to do my own thing, and I enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed the process. It was difficult for sure. And I think what another element of being difficult is my peers were all doing different things. Meaning they were doing a corporate life, right? They were, I don't know, wearing a corporate attire or suits or whatever, going to big Raffles Place offices. And I was like trying to refresh my manual driving license because I had to drive a van for my laser tag business to drive around. We did a mobile laser tag business, and it was a bit of a fear back then. I got my license early on in my life, and then I didn't drive for a long time, and suddenly I had to do this. So I hear you, but I asked that question about why you're so eminent about building. I thought there was some kind of experience that you had before, But I hear you. And after Salesforce, did you go straight into this sales dual thing right away? Or what do you do after that?
So after Salesforce, I was doing, I think, Notion consulting for a bit.
Yep.
So I was building
I remember that.
Notion workspaces for companies. And then it expanded into different tools like Monday.com. People started asking me to help them integrate their data across different platforms. So then I started getting into the automation and integration space. This was before AI came about. Now it's a lot easier. And it got to a point where it got too technical. So I self-learned, right? I just picked it up. So I wasn't too technical, and it got too technical. And that's when my brother joined me. Me and my brother are co-founders now, right? We're running the company together. So that's when he joined me. We started to, being naive back then, we were in a system space, but then we decided, okay, a lot of people, they came to us to fix systems problem when they actually have strategic issues. So we're like, okay, maybe we can solve strategic issues. And when we got into the front end of the lead generation, go to market, starting to pick up different things. Yeah, so that sort of was kickstart of the journey of the agency that we ran back then.
What made your brother join you? Was it because he is the technical person? And what value does he bring to the table with you?
Yeah, so exactly that. So now I focus on sales and marketing, and then he does the product and tech. Works even better now after our pivot, where we're doing this AI SaaS model than before. But even back then, it was a similar approach. So the thing is, I've done it solo before, and it's really hard. And then I think because we have complementary skill sets, it's just a lot easier. And I think it's also because I've always wanted to do that. So for some reason, I think we both knew that eventually we wanted to do something together. So he ran his own startups before in uni, tried a bunch of different things, and then it just naturally came together, and it was just the right time where, his previous startup also didn't work out. And then we just started working together.
The next question I'm going to ask is a loaded one. So how's it like working with your brother?
So I think it, like a lot of people ask that, right? They're really curious, but I don't think there's anything different. In fact, I think it's, if the right fit, it's a very powerful partnership because you are building on a pre-built foundation of trust. And trust is the foundation of any good partnerships. So I've had previous partners where it didn't work out because our skill sets were too similar. So in this sense, because we have complementary skill sets and I can't do what he does, he can't do what I do, it's like we literally stay in our own lanes and then we just align on the direction and then we just execute accordingly. So I think that lends itself very well. And because we grew up together, we know how we fight of sorts or argue. We're very used to it, right? So it's like we can be very open, we can be very blunt, all for the benefit of achieving that same outcome. So knowing that patterns going into it makes things a lot easier. And something that we did right at the start before we actually started, and I learned this from another program that I was part of, is just to set clear expectations. So before we decided to incorporate, do all that kind of stuff, we just sat down and we said, hey, the relationship stands above everything else. Even if the business fails, if someone wants to leave, what are the conditions? What are the terms? We've got it all laid out. So if anything happens, it wouldn't be a case of, oh, like who gets what and whatever. So everything is laid out clearly, very transparent, and then so that we can really just stay focused on whatever we need to achieve. And this, obviously, hopefully we don't get to that state. In any case, it's always like the relationship over everything else.
I love it. It's like a prenup, right? Like a founder prenup.
So yeah, sort of.
Yeah. No, but it's very important. It's something that I really, really recommend from personal experience. I think the prenup is super important. And after my experience, I have been slanted towards avoiding co-founders. But if people were to do it, or 100% recommend a prenup in that sense. There's a proper word for it. It's not called prenup. It's a thing co-founder agreement or something like that.
Yeah, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
It's pretty informal at the beginning anyway.
Yeah. But most people start something, don't think about the end. They don't think about ending it, they don't about leaving. But it's super important. And I think maybe kudos to you, your maturity, and maybe I like to think that you have done different things before, even starting Sales Duo. So I think and this is an example of wisdom doesn't necessarily means age, or rather age doesn't necessarily means wisdom, right? I think it's a lot about data points. It's a lot about you being initiative about starting things, doing things. That comes with experience. That brings you experience, so not age per se. And I 100% agree with this prenup. I think it's very important to set clear expectations. And I also picked up words like the right fit, trust, setting clear expectations, relationship first. Fit, how to define right fit besides skill set? Do you think that's also other elements of right fit that's needed for a good co-founder relationship to work?
I would say the word values come up a lot, and I think that's part of it. Obviously, it's a loaded word, right? You gotta unpack it. But I think because we grew up together, I guess that's more easy to align. But if you find a friend or whatever, that could be something that, again, it's a bit difficult to figure out if you don't know them well enough. And I think another example comes to mind, which is like working with friends, right? Especially, say, best friends or whatever. I think all these sort of closer relationships that you have in your life has the potential to go both ways. But
Yep.
when done well, it can be super, super powerful because, again, you've got that pre-built trust. And because if, let's say, you already know someone for very long, you already know what they stand for, how they would react in different situations, I think those are very important. So when it comes to right fit, I would say yes. In terms of work ethic, in terms of values, in terms of alignment in what you want to achieve out of your life. So me and my brother, we're very aligned in the fact that we're not going to be some other company that just wants to lead a lifestyle business. We very much want to scale it, grow as much as we can. And we know that if this doesn't work out, we'll continue to do different things until one strikes. And we'll just, continue different businesses, probably different startups, different ideas. And I don't think that will ever stop. Yeah.
I want to add something like you said about best friend to co-founders can go like both ways, right? Can be very negative or very positive. But I like to add this observation and dimension that I think even if someone very well, be like a brother, be like a best friend, but that's always been based on past experiences. You grew up together like age 0 to let's say 25, for example. But I like to think that 25 and beyond, it's an unknown. But the values that you have from age 12 or age 0 to 25, it is A, B, and C. But going forward, your values can change because life changes. People have new life experiences. Maybe one way to think about it is that if you have someone earning, I don't know, for example, an arbitrary amount, $2,000 a month, the kind of lifestyle, the kind of experiences that this person has at this salary could be a very different one when someone scales to a 20,000 salary. The kind of friends you keep, the kind of friends you gain along the way, the things that you do at that two different stages. I'm putting in very simplistic terms. And hence, all the more I emphasize that having this prenup, I think is super important because we cannot predict the future. As much as you got a very good, you knew for life, you knew your brother for life, but things change.
For sure.
I think people's vision, expectations about the business can also change depending on how they scale as well. So I think the prenup is super important. And I think it's just a way to protect, I wouldn't say the business, but also protect the relationship, especially when you and your brother are very aligned and you put relationship first. So that's something that I always advocate that on hindsight I should have done, or I should have taught more of. But we all learn things differently and sometimes through the hard way.
For sure.
So I'm a big fan that you try different things and all those things are not taught in school.
Nope.
And and this is what I wish school teaches more of. The world out there is so much grey. There's no black and white. We are taught theory, but the world out there is so grey. And you did finance. SMU is a business school, but signing a co-founder's prenup was never mentioned. But it's super important. The infighting is number one cause of failure within startups. One or two, first or second, biggest cause of failure. I know I should be asking you this, but I just want to say one more thing that I've recently heard about. Do you know about the Michelin story, the Michelin brothers? You know about the Michelin guide, right?
Yeah.
The food guide, right? But you also know that was not the original business.
I have no idea about that story.
Okay.
So.
Have you seen like car tires? There's this brand called Michelin.
Yeah.
It's actually the same company. I didn't know they're French, but they are French. They started about 100 plus years ago. And then long story short, brothers, two of them are brothers. I think they inherited the business, if I'm not wrong. I stand to be corrected And long story short, one of them similar, and that reminds me of the Michelin brothers story. One is a maker, one is a seller. So similar to you and your brother. And the fascinating story is that when they inherited this rubber business, they decided that, and cars were a reality because people were still using horses. And they said that, look, in order to make sure that the demand for car tires go up, we need to encourage mobility. We need to encourage travel. We need to encourage people using cars. So what did they do? They went up to set up a guide, the Michelin guide, for people to travel to different exotic hotels, food places. And that's the marketing genius. And when they encourage that, then people will travel more. When people travel more, people will burn more tires. That's why they need more tires. So they think about the industry play. Anyway, that's something fascinating, but I'll put in the show notes, share that with you. And thanks for indulging this topic, right? Because I don't get many like brother, co-founder guests on this conversation, on this podcast. And I want to come back to one point where after Salesforce, you went to Notion and Monday.com and then automation. It seems to me that these are all demand-led transition or demand-led journey, meaning you got customers telling that they want this and that's why you pivoted towards all this.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty much the case.
Looking back, would you have done anything different about this part of your journey?
I think obviously you only make decisions at that point based on your knowledge and whatever. I think everything that I've done, it's what led me to where I am today. I think I learned a lot from all those things, but over time, one thing that we learn in terms of where we want to position ourselves is not be tied to any particular tool, because popularity of the tools will affect your, let's say you're a Salesforce consultant, right? Sure, you can build a decent sized business, but it will never be a super large one. So whenever you tag to a particular tool, there's always a ceiling that you get kept up on whatever things. And even when we moved into I would say the one transition that we made that wasn't informed by demand was where we failed the most, which is moving to lead gen. It was just something that we were like, oh, this might be better. And we were like, oh, maybe that's easier to sell because it's sales related, help people generate revenue. But actually we struggled way more there than we did initially. But the good thing is we learned how to actually do it ourselves, which is what's helping our growth now for our new pivot, I feel.
I think that's a good segue into what you and your brother are doing now at Sales Duo. Can you share more about what you guys are doing now?
Yeah, so if we break down the lead gen process, we actually talk about what we call OTP, so offer timing person. A lot of people, they focus on writing better emails, writing better messages. That's the offer element, right? But actually, if you reach out to people at the wrong time or you reach out to the wrong people altogether, your efforts won't pay fruits. So the analogy I like to give is, let's say you enjoy steak, right? I offer you a $1 steak. It's a very enticing offer. A lot of people would take it up. But if you try to sell that offer to someone that just ate, it's going to be a much harder sell as opposed to if they're hungry. And if you go one step further and you sell that steak to a vegetarian, it's not even relevant. So that's the thought process that people should be going through when they are looking to prospect into their target audience, right? Finding the right people, which is what people call ICP, right? Ideal customer profile. Then you try to find signals to indicate that it's a good timing for people to reach out to. Then you look at the messaging. Back to what I mentioned earlier, we realized we were not so good at the offer messaging part, or rather that's not what we enjoy the most. And when we looked at where our clients saw the most value and what we're best at is actually the front two elements of finding the right people at the right time. So now what we do is we help to build AI agents that help people find new sales opportunities by tracking signals and also finding the right people based on their qualifiers. So if you go to our website, we recently just revamped it. Otherwise, every time people ask me what we do, I find it very hard to explain. So we just spend one weekend doing it up. But it's the three use cases are, first of all, we want to figure out what are these signals that you want to be tracking to indicate that it's the right time to reach out. And then the second one is custom data enrichment. So these are data points that you would use either from a qualification standpoint or a research standpoint. So one of our clients, for example, they want to target companies that are retail fronts that have more than 5 branches. So these are things that you can't easily find off Apollo. You can't go to SalesNav and get a filter for it. So when we were running our agency, these were the workflows that we found that we often have to build it like custom for our clients, where they saw a lot of value because traditionally you have to go to the website, you click contact us, click location, or you go to Google Maps and see how many there is. But now with AI, you can pull all that data points at scale in a very short period of time so they can go and focus on your outreach. So what we're really focusing on is building these tools to not replace humans, because I know there's a lot of talk about that. But in the age of AI, humans become ever more important to build trust, to build relationships. And that's where we want to help remove all this manual, repetitive processes so that people can focus on just meeting people, building relationships, building trust. So yeah, those were the two. The third one is we are planning to combine all this data into what we call actionable intelligence. So one of our early users as well, he was saying there's almost too much data and noise out there in the space right now. So it's about what are these like top 1 to 3 insights that actually power your prospecting, which is going to give you the best results. So we often just do a quick onboarding to really understand, okay, do you want to leverage your warm contacts in your CRM that you want to track for signals, get pinged when there are new activities come up that make you want to prioritize them? Do you want us to help you find new contacts that you can reach out to? And then what are these qualifiers, data points that help you in some way lead score and prioritize who you should be reaching out to so that you don't waste time on either unqualified leads or miss out on leads that are potentially hot leads that you should be reaching out to. So we don't do the engagement piece anymore. So we don't set up people's email infrastructure, write the messaging, send it out. So that is not something that we do at this point. And we're just focused on the front end of just getting people the data and the intelligence they need to do their prospecting.
So anyway, yeah, if this runs well, I deserve a cut. Anyway, follow you on LinkedIn, and I think yesterday or 2 days ago, you had this post about day 30 for deal close 10 lessons. I want to give you some airtime to talk about these 10 lessons, pick some lessons to share with me and the audience.
I haven't referred to the post to see what I shared, but
I tell you, okay, number 1, sell what is demand. Number 2, sell what we're good at. Number 3, building our own business instead of others. Shit, my screenshot only until, because it was a very long one.
No, it's fine. I think I can roughly remember some of the things I mentioned. But I'll just share what comes to mind now.
Yeah.
First of all, I think it's been only a month, but it's been good early traction. And I think I'm pretty happy for what we managed to achieve in the month, just as a start. Of course, there's still more work to be done. But looking back at the pivot, why it worked so well, or rather relatively well, and what looks ahead, I think the first couple comes to mind in terms of just staying in they call it zone of genius, and being able to have conviction in what you sell is making a lot of difference. The thing is, when we shifted into lead gen, and that I think it was partly informed by where we saw the opportunity was and where we thought we could do better, but it was misaligned in terms of where we were good at. So having now made this shift back into the world of AI and automation, which if you think about it is where we first started, we made a detour, right? And then we're back to where we started. And then it's doing better in comparison, I would say. It's because we just recognize where we're good at, and then we just focus on that and that alone. With that comes the confidence that we know we can deliver. Yeah. So that was something that's very stressful, and it's not something that we have full conviction in our ability to deliver.
Yeah.
Because there's just too many different moving parts. So now that we moved into this and we're just providing data and intelligence, it's a lot easier to be sure that we can deliver, right? The worst case is literally I go and manually go and verify everything, right? That there's something that can be done so that I control the outcomes. Even if that's not what we're doing now, but I'm saying that what can be done in order to deliver the results. And with that confidence and the ability to deliver, now when I go and sell, I have much more conviction in our ability to deliver. And I think that's been top of mind in terms of, you're also in sales, right? You know how it works. If you truly believe in the product and you know that it can solve someone's pain point, if they don't buy, you're almost like, why not? I can help you. And there's more like transfer of energy, like conviction, commitment that makes people trust you and want to work with you. So that translates. And I think that's been something that for us, we're just always looking at what we do best and just continuing to double down on it. And I think a sideline to that is just staying focused on what matters most, because there's so many things that needs to be done. So we just need to stay focused.
You said sales need to believe in their product. I read contrarian views about that, and I'll share briefly. I'm aligned with that. Like, the sales need to believe in their product. Hear you. I think this other contrarian view is that the salespeople need to fall in love with the problem or the problem statement versus the solution or the product that they are selling or pushing. I'm a bit of both in that sense. I think you do want to be so obsessed about your solution or your product that you think everyone is a customer. If all you have is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail, right? So I think people need to be a bit more separate that passion versus the logic, in my opinion. Some people can do it very well, some may not. Some like a diehard fans, everything. Oh, you need to use this, you need to try this. So I think, go ahead.
I think just to add on something about that's also something that I've learned is that you don't need to sell everyone. I think maybe when you're a bit newer, that I used to have that shit. Why do people do it? Is it something that I'm doing wrong?
Yeah.
So then I think after I've done it for a while now, I just realized that the discovery phase is just understanding whether you have something that you can help them with. And of course, if your product or solution can help them solve, then you have almost an obligation for you to offer a solution to them, right? But you're totally right in the fact that you don't need to force a fit where there isn't one. There's a ton of different providers out there. And I think just having that understanding that you don't need to sell everyone and knowing where that differentiation point is and actually being okay to walk away from bad fits, I think it's important as well.
I will say, I wrote down three things. Sometimes salespeople need to sell the problem. You sell the problem, client or the lead agrees with you, then naturally when you present your solution or your product, then there's a very natural progression because they really agree with you that's a problem that they have.
Yeah.
And they agree that's a big problem. So that's one. The other approach maybe in a broader perspective is besides falling in love with your product, falling in love with the problem, but falling in love with the customer or the customer space. Let me explain. My approach is a bit more consultative. I will see that I go in the attitude that I'm a consultant, right? I'm here to find out the pinpoints, to do discovery, and I want to find out as many problems as you have as much as possible. The more you tell me, the more I feel that I've won. I win because I win your trust. And the better I've done my discovery. Now, I may not have all the solutions, but that's okay. Because what you said, right? Offer, timing, person. Maybe the person I'm talking to is the right person. But it's also through the discovery questions whether I find out he or she is the right person or not. Right? Is it a budget holder? Is it the approver or whatever? And sometimes problems come later on. And maybe the timing of the need of that solution can come later on.
Yeah.
But if you go in, or rather, I'd rather go in as a consultant, be trusted, so that you come to me next time if that timing is right. If you encounter that problem that my solution is solving, you keep the doors open. And I've seen this in the sense that even if I've left a certain industry or left a company, calls still come in. Hey, I got a number from this person there. You still do this or not? You still sell this or not? I need So I'm not saying I'm good or whatever, but my point is that if you were there as a trusted someone, they come to you and they may ask you, hey, you got a recommendation or not? How? So I feel that it's a lot more valuable as a salesperson in my opinion, because wherever you go, people remember you, people call you, people come to you for solutions, regardless which product or which company that you sell in the end. So I feel that's a bit more timeless. And back to the thing about timing, right? Like you're spot on, right? Maybe a right problem, but wrong timing, all right? Or wrong person in the sense that, or it's the right person or right role, but wrong timing in the sense that this person is looking to cruise in the job, don't want to take any new risks. This is a bit more for enterprise lah. All this person just came into the role and wants to do something to prove to the boss that they make the right hire. So the timing is important in that sense. You understand this because you're a good sales guy. Yeah, I want to ask this question also much earlier on, we talk about you didn't think that you didn't expect that this would be so hard or this hard. What has been the most difficult thing so far in this journey of yours?
So I think I listened to a lot of different podcasts and interviews, and I think the one thing that I resonate with the most is the uncertainty element of it. But if I tell you today, you spend the next 10 years and you get this particular outcome, it's a lot easier to then commit to, okay, if I do 10 years and then I will get X dollar of amount, just for simplicity's sake, let's say you get $1 million, right? So I work 10 years, I get $1 million. If you know that you can just work 10 years and get $1 million, it's easier to commit. What makes entrepreneurship so hard is that you don't know whether it takes 10, 20, 30, 40 years, and you don't know what's the end amount that it could be 40 years and $0. Some people go bankrupt, some people fail, started multiple things, nothing worked out. I think the uncertainty is what is most difficult. Is everything else aside, I think that is the hardest part of putting in so many hours and not knowing, because I guess we, at least in Singapore, we grew up in an environment where there's always like an input and output, right? You always study for an answer and then eventually you get to somewhat of a equation or whatever not. So there's always that black and white side to things. If you put in X amount of effort, you get X number of result. But in entrepreneurship, that equation doesn't exist.
I argue the same for being a corporate or being an employee as well. You and I are both victims of layoffs. We say victim.
But the thing is, right? Every month you still get a set paycheck. Layoffs aside, there's still stability in having something.
I'm just trying to put things into words. And in a way, we are opposite end of the spectrums. But I am a huge fan and admirer of what you and your brother are doing, especially with this build in public kind of thing going on LinkedIn, where you share how you build your company in public. I also want to think about if you or your parents work in a company like Kodak or Nokia, and when things turn sour, I don't know how that could have felt. Things were going so well. Nokia was the number one handphone. People playing Snake. Okay, you're a bit too young to know that.
I played.
And then of course Kodak before the show cameras came around. So I hear you about the stability of a paycheck, and I'll also tell you another phrase that I heard. I could be butchering this. The top 3 most addictive things in the world are drugs, alcohol, and the monthly paycheck.
Yeah.
And of course, I layer this with like context that everyone's circumstances are different. In fact, I've come to realize that being able to focus about career is also a privilege. We take it for granted sometimes, right? It's you get older or unfortunate things happen to you or your family or loved ones, then maybe you cannot focus that much energy and time
For sure.
on your career or what you do for work, right? So then a paycheck, as much as it's addictive, but it's what you really need.
Yep.
And nothing wrong also to just sell your time for a paycheck. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, nothing wrong.
Yeah. My view is, especially in recent times and with AI, this seemingly stable career is not going to be that stable. Someone just said this, right? The co-founder or the founder of Black City said a few months back, as much as I think 50% of the jobs today could be gone by, I think, in the next 5 years. I forgot some numbers, but some scary big number. I feel that you are in a tunnel now. You don't see the end of the light, or at the end of the tunnel. You don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I've been there, and I think I can relate to that. But I also think that there is the only certain things in life are death and taxes, right? I'll give you a scenario. If you know that you put in X dollars, you get 1 point something X returns, what will you do? You back still will borrow, right? Everything, because there's certainty. But what was there? There's nothing. There's no such thing like that, in my opinion. Some say maybe, I don't know, Singapore Treasury bonds, whatever. Anyway, I digress. I'm not sure about the stability part. And I think instead of dwelling on this part, of course you need to pay your bills, your obligations, do what you need to do. But I'm read out the story of how Airbnb got big and famous because they sold cereal boxes in their early days to raise funds, because I think the cash was burning out. And then when the investors saw that, they had to resort to selling cereal boxes. And I think the investors were impressed by their resilience, right? And I think that's the values of the co-founders of Airbnb that they saw. So I think that's just one story that I got reminded. I don't have answers for you. I think nobody has answers. I think the other thing that came to my mind is I think it's also good to define what's the goalposts, what are your success metrics. Revenue is important. I think it's just to make sure that it's sustainable, but it doesn't always have to be all about revenue, maybe at the start. I think that's one. And I think the other thing that could be helpful is also to decide when is the cutoff point, when's the cut loss point, area of loss. The timeline, it could be mostly timeline, or it could be like cash in the bank or whatever. And I don't think it's any way a failure. I think it's never a failure. I think you put yourself out there, you're a brother, and try things. And along the way, the network that you built, I think it's immense. Lessons that you learned is also immense. So I think the future belongs to, or rather fortune favors the brave. Fortune favors the action-oriented people like yourself. And this is not a pep talk by any chance. But I think it's uncertain, yes, but nothing is certain, my friend. Only death and taxes.
Yeah, I say that as in that is the hardest part, but it's not saying that it's. To me, I know that the only one thing that I can control is that I don't give up or quit. I can't remember which is the one that people usually use, but yeah, that's the only thing that I can control. And so long as I just keep going, it will eventually work out. So long as I don't just continue making the same mistakes, lah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I had a conversation on a podcast with someone who, to build his startup, he worked part-time at somewhere, I think $13, $12 per hour, just to pay the bills so that he can on the side run this thing. So I think resilience, I think being resourceful, I think it's also a very important trait, I feel, right, to survive.
For sure.
Which I'm sure you have plenty of. The next segment I want to talk about, if it's okay, I want to shift gears to AI, right? I know whatever you're doing now with Sales Duel, it's using AI to do the automation part for the 3 use cases you mentioned earlier. But I want to ask how you use AI on, I think, 3 things. For what you do in your business, I think that's quite clear. Then let's down to what do you do, how do you use AI to build your business?
So I think right now, and before I guess I touch on that, right? I think one thing that I've learned is not to jump into AI before you know what you're doing exactly. Example is I used to rush into automating things before I knew what really worked. And I apply that same methodology to AI. AI can only augment the process that is already working. Of course, you can argue that they can do deep research and whatever not, right? And I think there's value in that. But where it stands, there's still a lot of context that needs to be given in order to achieve the desired outcome. So the context is what's important, and the context is where you need to build your own intelligence in that sense to make sure that the AI achieves the outcome. So, in fact, now I am not using AI as much as I should be because I am putting in the manual work to figure out what works first before I scale it up. Back then, when we already had working things, then of course you can create different AI agents and whatnot to do it. I think spinning something up is not difficult. The hard part is like figuring out what works. And that's not something that can entirely be replaced by AI. So I guess start with that caveat. And then, of course, once you have something that's working, then you just use AI as a kickstart board of sorts, right? You don't need to start from a blank sheet. It could be, say, writing a LinkedIn post. It could be writing the messaging for your campaigns. There's a lot of use cases like pre-call research. A lot of those can be used with AI, and that we are slowly building out use cases around.
Very cool. How do you use AI for your own non-work issues?
Honestly, now most of my time is filled with
So
work.
work,
So there isn't much things that I do outside of work or use AI for in that sense.
That's a correct answer. Yeah. And I think for folks out there who are keen to use more AI or more AI tools, what's one piece of advice?
So I think I was just commenting on another post the other day where I said it's just curiosity and execution. You would learn way more just by subscribing for some AI agent tool and building a tool than watching 100 YouTube videos on how to set it up. Like once you watch a YouTube video, you realize the first thing you get stuck on is even how to log into the platform or how to start clicking the first button. So I think being curious on what's the latest out there, and then actually after you've seen something, to put it into action, to try it out and see how it works and then learn from there. I think that's what's most important.
What's your one go-to resource to learn more about AI?
Actually now, honestly, it's my brother because he's constantly building, right? So everything he just shares with me. But I think LinkedIn is probably the one where I'm a bit more active, and then I learn from a lot of other creators.
Cool. What are your thoughts on the future of work and what it means for the average white-collar worker out there?
I think, first of all, everybody that's average will eventually get phased out. I think that with AI or not with AI, it's the same. So I think that narrative comes from people who maybe haven't put in as much effort into staying ahead of the curve, and they're afraid of being left behind. I think it's actually very exciting that with the power of AI, what you can do. And there's just so many things that can be done that we're just scratching the surface of. I think even just 2 years ago, there's a lot of things that could have been done that is already being done today. And the exponential rate of improvement of AI is, of course, in some ways scary, but I guess maybe when, I don't know, computers came out or mobile phones came out and what it was capable of, maybe people were scared as well. And look at where we are today. So it's just one of another evolution that people just need to get used to. Any change is scary, right? So this is just one of the maybe scarier change because it's a paradigm shift. But eventually everybody will get used to it. So I don't think people should run away from it. People should just, in fact, invest more time into learning how to operate with it, because everybody that has adopted it has seen significant productivity gains. But I think one thing that I am concerned about is the impact on learning, especially for younger folks, where the default is to lean on AI for critical thinking. I was just having this chat with my brother the other day. It's worrying because now that we're all grown up, we already have developed our critical thinking capabilities. But I think for kids that are a bit younger, where their default is not to think, but to ask AI, I think that's a scary notion. So that's the one thing that, I've been thinking about.
On this, I read or heard or watched somewhere that, because this issue about like in schools, like students are using AI to cheat, right? To give answers and all that. I think that's inevitable. So the education needs to change. But I think, I hope I articulate this correctly. One way to do it, I think it was recommended by a prof of somewhere, like teaching kids to, I think, ask questions. So prompt engineering is important. How to ask right questions, under the good questions or right questions, I think is important. But maybe also teaching kids to critique the answers from ChatGPT or from AI, it's also important, right? I think that's also a way to help them formulate or strengthen their critical thinking skills, right? Always challenge everything, I think of us teaching them like first principles and then using that to really challenge and critique. Yeah, I don't have full answers for that. Maybe I'll find something I put in a show note. My last question about AI is, what's one thing you think shouldn't be done with AI?
I think what comes to mind is just using it for bad things. Lah. Like with everything, it can be used for good and for bad. And I think the same thing in the wrong hands can have disastrous impacts. So I think that's probably the one thing that we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah. Thanks. Last segment now. This is more of a closing reflections or like quick lightning round. I haven't got very quick lightning answers from guests so far, but let's try today. To someone who is a recent graduate, I would say less than 5 years in the job, in a corporate job, and considering a side hustle or business, what's one piece of advice you would give?
It's just having this chat recently. I would say make the decision whether you do the side hustle is just as a form of like passion, or do you want to actually grow it into a full-time thing? Because the way in which you execute will be very different. If you want to keep it as a side hustle, yeah, then just take it easy. But if you have the intention to make it full-time, then you got to execute like you mean it and to burn bridges where the time comes to make sure that you actually make it work.
How do you suggest someone does that to decide whether it should be a side hustle or full-time business?
I think they decide them for themselves. It's just like how I already knew I wanted to do my own thing since the beginning. I think it's just something that people know. It's just people don't act on it. I don't think there's any decision-making mechanism.
Do you think, looking back, is there anything from your childhood that is linked to this desire to build your own thing?
I honestly have no idea. The one influence I would say is my dad runs his own business, so I see that. But I think that may be the reason why, but I have no idea.
Yeah. I ask this because it's clear that even in school, you've already been trying different things. And some people are already out of school, so they don't have that luxury or that comfort to try different things while they're still full-time in school. Yeah, and the other aspect is I've got 2 young kids, so I'm also trying to think about how can I inculcate entrepreneurial kind of a spirit in them, and at least expose them to that. So that's why I asked. Next one. What's one piece of conventional career or life advice that you completely disagree with now?
I guess to concur with your point earlier that corporate jobs have stability. Yeah, I think that's going to change.
What's one book, movie, YouTube video, or podcast you found yourself recommending to others, and why?
I listen a lot to Alex Hormozi. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but it's just very technical business stuff. That's where I lean more to.
If you could have a billboard with any message you want to broadcast, what would it be?
Probably it's just if you have a dream to pursue it, it's better to die with no regrets than to live the rest of your life thinking what if.
Don't have what ifs. Okay. I said exactly the same thing in a previous conversation. And if individuals want to connect with you, what's the best place to do it?
Probably LinkedIn. I think search me, the one with the orange yellowish background. That's me. Or our website, salesforce.io.
Marcus Cheu, right? Cheu.
Yeah.
This is a LinkedIn. And that's it. Marcus, I thank you very much